Hello, welcome. I'm super excited to be diving into stuff with you today. We're going to talk all about inner stability. So, as we're diving in and as we're kind of getting settled in this space, I'm going to put some frankincense oil on my wrists. And before we dive in, I just want to remind you that, so whenever I've taken a webinar or watched a masterclass, I have found that so often they are very fast paced and just a lot of info thrown at you really, really quickly. And I am going to be throwing quite a bit of information your way, but I really want to try and make this space a space of peace, a space of stability and groundedness. So I'm going to ask you right now, right where you're at, to just take a few deep breaths, kind of maybe shake it out. If you have essential oils, go ahead and breathe those in, and we'll get settled. I also want to preface this by saying I am human, and I will make mistakes as we're talking through this as well. So I think that often in these master classes, people feel like they have to be perfect. And I think perfect is just not a reality. We're all human. We're in this experience together. And I am here to share my experience with you. I'm here to share my expertise with you. But I'm also here to be human with you. So that is how I want to preface this. And now I would love to dive into developing inner stability and how it will help you find your voice, call in confidence, and unleash your creative ideas to the world. See, I'm already messing up my words. Okay, so let's dive on in. Okay, finding my mouse. There we go. Yep, so I am Megan Colleen Johnson. If you are unfamiliar with me, I go by Megs Colleen on all of my social media. That's my brand. And I am a life coach, a marketing mentor, and a self-trust guide, supporting passionate women as they step into the role of Reclamation Queen of their own life. And essentially what this is I have found that so much of our fulfillment is actually about how willing we are to step into our power and confidence. That in mind, I have combined my background in marketing with my experience as a life coach to guide women in reclaiming their voice and crafting intuitive strategies to reach their goals. That's what I'm all about. And that's what we're here to do, is provide you with some structure, some pillars to develop inner stability so you can unleash your creativity to the world, unleash your magic, unleash your you to the world. So, why inner stability? Inner stability equals self-trust equals confidence. Almost every single one of my one-on-one clients desires more confidence so they can unleash their creative ideas into the world. But what I've noticed, myself included, is that we get so caught up in the unleash phase that we forget the foundations. We forget how important it is to have our own back, to deeply trust ourselves and our worth, so that then our confidence and creativity flows naturally out of us. So this training is all about those foundations. It's about the deep trust, which leads to the unleashing. Sound good? So let's go ahead and step into the next slide. We're going to dive into the meat of things. As soon as I find my mouse. I'm having issues with my mouse today. There we go. Yes, we get so caught up in the unleash our creative ideas phase, we forget the foundations. So, have you ever had life, just life, and then you felt jolted out of inner peace for the rest of the day? So, this actually happened to me in a pretty silly way just the other day when I spilled coffee all over my jeans. There's your proof. This was the first time I'd ever decided to wear white jeans, and this happened. So, ironically, just before this occurred, I was on Instagram stories sharing all about developing stability from within. And, basically, I was then forced to be a living embodiment of my own message. How can I remain stable? How can I remain having inner peace even when coffee is all over the place? Again, kind of a silly example, but still, it happens, right? So as I was reflecting on this mishap, I had this realization that even when we stand in our power, so I was showing up for myself, hopping on stories, being confident with my message. And even when we pick up our power, shit happens. But Reclamation Queens never quit. So I'm a big fan of story, and I also love many of the Disney princesses. So a kind of practical example of this then is, what if Mulan had never risen up when her father was requested for war? What if Moana had never gone past the reef? What if Anna never took that next right step? There really wouldn't be much of a story to tell. And I want to take that deeper. What if you are that reclamation queen? What if your life right now is asking you to rise up and reclaim your power? This is where inner stability comes into play. Because before any reclamation queen can take action, they first must cultivate an inner stability for themselves. A resilience that they can rely on for the steps ahead. They notice their feelings, they honor them, and then they dive into aligned action. So, within this training, we are going to dive deep into how you can develop stability from within so you can truly shine as the reclamation queen of your life. You get to be the Disney princess. All right, so 3 pillars of inner stability. I am going to take a sip of tea before we go further. It's yummy. Embodiment, non-judgment, and resilience. So we're going to go ahead and dive into embodiment. So for the sake of this training, we are going to keep embodiment pretty on the top level, because embodiment can get really deep really fast. So for the sake of this training, we are going to simply call embodiment self-returning. It's embodying you, coming back to your body. So the way that we engage with the world begins with our sensory organs. What our body experiences is passed on to the brain, and that's where we then create stories and titles around those sensations. We name our emotions. We, decide if there is a story to our sensation. This is why we have metaphors like, I'm feeling down today, or I'm warming up to her. Because our feelings, our emotions begin in our body as physical sensations, then they move up and influence our brain and the stories that we create in our minds to make sense of our experiences. So what is really unfortunate at this day and age, actually the narrative is shifting, but what is unfortunate is that in the past 50 plus years in the modern world, we have been conditioned to believe that our minds and bodies function differently. They function separately. We have learned to live from a disembodied state, which can often cause instability and frustration because we're unable to understand how to meet our own needs or even recognize what our needs are. And this is really the foundation of emotional intelligence. As we reconnect to our bodies and how they communicate with us, we're then able to unravel the stories that our mind creates and then reach the core feelings and emotions, notice what is true for us, and move forward with aligned action. So that's kind of a lot. And I highly recommend diving into this if this is really interesting to you. There are so many books about embodiment. There are so many books about how our body processes emotions, and it's a huge part of developing inner stability. It's reconnecting, and it's you're going to hear me say this throughout this training a lot. We're building a relationship with ourselves. because in our modern world, we have learned to numb. We have learned to disembody. We have learned to quiet what our intuition is saying. And so before we unleash the deep magic that we can feel inside, we first have to connect to our core self, so then our magic actually will flow more naturally. So I want to dive into an example, like a practical example of what disembodiment looks like. So I want you to imagine you're in a really important meeting and you have to use the bathroom. You know there's no possible way that you can leave this meeting without getting fired. So essentially, you force your brain to disembody so that you can make it through the meeting. You notice that you no longer feel like you have to go to the bathroom. And the reality is, your body likely still needs to release. However, in order to create external safety in the meeting and at your job, you have begun a pattern of disembodiment. And over time, when we continue those patterns, it creates distrust within our bodies. So just like a one-off is not that big of a deal. But what's difficult is we start to develop patterns of disembodiment, and then there's instability from within. Our body's like, hey, I had this sensation. I need to let the brain know that I'm uncomfortable, or that, this is a big deal. But I know the brain doesn't really listen to me, so oh well. And then that creates distrust and disharmony from inside of us. This example, we're trying to simplify things as much as possible just so you can notice the disembodiment. But there are so many more nuances that we could go into. We're just going to leave that really simple. That's an example of disembodiment. So now let's dive into an example of embodiment. Imagine that you are out for lunch with a friend and you see an ex walk by, right? So you're sitting there at the cafe, you've got your, coffee or whatever it is, and you're chatting with your friend and an ex walks by. Your body just kind of tenses up and you notice a feeling of embarrassment rising up because of your reaction. Instead of swallowing your sensations and feelings, you quickly catch yourself. You take a deep breath, and then you excuse yourself for a moment. Once you're in the bathroom of the restaurant or just kind of standing on your own, you mentally speak over yourself saying, I see you, I hear you, and I honor you. You went through a lot in that relationship, and I thank you for keeping me safe. I'm going to take a sip of my tea. I'm sorry. So I thank you for keeping me safe. And with that, you breathe in again. You release and you feel more grounded. You feel more embodied. So then you rejoin your friend and continue your lunch. So that's embodiment. When we notice our sensations, I'm feeling tense. Why am I feeling tense? How can I honor this feeling? How can I honor the tension? And then we can actually take aligned action. So within this example, it may seem like embodiment takes a long time, and it may not always take that long. But at the same time, it may take longer, especially at first, when you're learning to make these connections. As we build the trust muscles, then things can happen a little bit more quickly. So the key is just to keep leaning in, keep listening, and to keep honoring what we find. So with embodiment, it is so important for me to note that I am not a therapist. If you have been through trauma that may hinder your ability to safely develop your connection with your body, or if you feel panic at any time when seeking to grow in this area, please reach out for professional support. I need to make sure that you know that, because embodiment is... We hold a lot of trauma in our body, and again, there's lots of books about this as well. And when we're developing that connection again, some of those old traumas bubble up. So if you notice panic, if you notice a lot of stress that seems unmanageable, please ask for support. It's very important, and a beautiful thing to ask for support as well. So let's dive into some practical examples. So a few practical ways that you can begin practicing self-returning and reconnecting to your body. One of my favorites is yin yoga. Yin yoga is a really beautiful practice it's very slow, and it requires a lot of feeling and breathing into your body sensations. When it's done with intentionality, it provides a really beautiful space to notice how your body is feeling and then respond accordingly. One of the primary mantras of yin yoga is finding your edge. And I feel like that's just a beautiful mantra to have when you're reconnecting to your body as well, is you're leaning into these poses, you're feeling them, you're breathing, you're communicating with your body. Like if it's too much, you're going to find that edge. And when your body says, no, I can't go any further, then you pause and you honor that. And so I love yin yoga because it's just that constant communication with your body. Really, really beautiful. Love that. The other practical tip is meditation. So meditation does take a little bit more intentionality when you're using this to practice embodiment. So you have to be really intentional to ask, what does this part of my body feel like? What is she trying to communicate to me? I really, really love the practice of giving my body a pronoun, using she, he, they. And allowing, instead of it being an it's a she. And asking, what does she need? What is she feeling? And it just provides a much more expansive space to actually develop that trust and to remember that you are a whole being. You are a she, a he, a they. You're not an it. So with meditation, there are many free guided grounding and embodiment meditations, and I actually have one in my Reclamation Academy. So I will be talking more about the Reclamation Academy at the end of this training, but my tips for that are there are free ones, just Google, gotta love Google, and then there's also one within my Reclamation Academy, and there's a 7-day free trial if you want to dive into that. All right. Are you ready for, there's practical steps, yin yoga, meditation. I need to remember to click my slides. Pillar number 2, non-judgment. So a huge part of stability is cultivating safety. And just like in a close friendship or a partnership, cultivating a healthy relationship includes non-judgment. You're cultivating an expansive space of safety, of non-judgment, of welcoming for yourself and your body. And so as you begin, you're listening to your body and becoming more aware of your emotions and your inner dialogue, approach what you find with non-judgment. Create a safe space for all of your sensations, all of your experiences, your emotions, your thoughts. In other places when I've talked about this, I've called it noticing without judgment. And it's simply that, noticing what you feel, noticing your initial thoughts and reactions without judgment. Then as you notice your thoughts and emotions, you can ask yourself, is this real? Is this beneficial? How can I honor my experience and choose a thought or a next step that feels aligned with who I desire to be? It's really an act of emotional maturity, where as you notice your experience, you respond from a place of intentionality and integrity instead of reacting. And something I want to note as well is just please keep in mind that emotional intelligence or emotional maturity is a learned trait. It's not something that people are just gifted with, and some are not. It's just learned. So as you feel into your sensations and your emotions, notice them without judgment and respond with intentionality, and it will become easier and easier to do. So my first example for this is actually it's not too much of an example. It's more just letting you remember your inner mean girl. So you know that voice in your head. She says all the mean things. She's the one who calls you out, tells you're not good enough, that no one likes you, that is your example of judgment. I don't feel like I need to go deeper into that because we all know her. It's our inner mean girl, our negative Nancy, whatever you want to call her. This is what we're combating, that judgment. We're very, very good at placing negative meaning upon our emotions and our experience. If something feels misaligned, instead of just saying, oh, that feels hard, and then letting it go and choosing something different, honoring it and choosing something different, instead we're like, oh, that feels hard. It shouldn't be this difficult. Like, why is this so hard for me? What? Like, there's got to be something wrong with me because this feels so hard. And we like start this story, and it's this inner mean girl that we're familiar with. And so that's what we're combating, that judgment, because we want to cultivate the non-judgment, that safe space. So an example of non-judgment. So imagine you are preparing to meet your partner's close friends for the first time. You're a bit nervous because you know that they have been really close for years and are basically family, right? So your inner dialogue starts as you're getting ready for the gathering and you're looking in the mirror. You hear, you should probably dress up more. This just isn't fancy enough. So you quickly change, you look in the mirror again, and then, gosh, I thought this fit better. I should not have eaten so much for lunch. And that's when you stop. You know what's happening here. It's your inner mean girl slowly sneaking her way into your evening. So you take a deep breath, you close your eyes, and then you remind yourself, my partner loves me for being myself. Nothing more, nothing less. And I deserve my own love and acceptance too. You look back in the mirror, you smile, and you shut the door on that inner mean girl dialogue. So non-judgment is tricky to call out. So I'm going to share one more example. So imagine that you had a really busy day at work. I actually love this example. I think this is a really good one. So imagine you had a really busy day at work. Your partner was snippy this morning because they had a heavy conversation with their parents the night before. And your car, it was low on gas. You had to stop on your way to work to fill up the tank. And so you show up to work a little bit late. As soon as you arrive, you realize a meeting was rescheduled and moved to that morning. So you have to quickly run in, present your ideas, right? So that's the stage. You're late for work, your partner's mad at you, your car ran out of gas, all the things. Overall, it just was not an awesome morning, and you end up dropping the ball on a few of your tasks that day. So before the day's ending, you're sitting at your desk, and your mind just feels really heavy. You can hear that inner dialogue starting to play. Like, you seriously sucked at life today. Your coworkers are pissed at you. Your partner feels completely ignored. Things are never going to get better. That it just starts to spiral. So seeing her, feeling her, you close your eyes, you take a deep breath, and you remind yourself of what you actually know versus what your inner dialogue is saying. I am good at my job. I just had an off day. My coworkers are a bit frustrated, but I apologized for my mistake and I fixed the issues. Everything will be okay. My partner is an incredible human, and they can manage their own emotions and ask for what they need from me when they need it. And right now, I need to just show up for me. You take a few more deep breaths. You ground in by feeling the weight of your feet on the floor, and then you open your eyes, jot down your remaining to-dos for the day. Everything will be okay. So, similar to embodiment, non-judgment does take a lot of practice. And this is where I really, really love this next practical tool. So, moving into the practical tips. And I remembered my slides this time. So the first one is unhooking. So I would love, because this is a long training, right? So I want you to shake it out a little bit. I'm going to take another sip of my tea. I highly recommend take a sip of your beverage. Okay. So wherever you're sitting, I would love for you to place your feet flat on the floor. And I'm going to leave my eyes open, but if you feel comfortable, I would love for you to go ahead and close your eyes. And I want you to imagine that all of the thoughts that people are thinking about you that you keep attaching to, there's strings that are actually hooked into you, right? So I think this person's mad at me, or this is an unresolved thing. This situation at work is causing me tension. Especially, I get really hooked into other people's emotions. And if you have any empathic tendencies, I know many of us as creatives, we have that, right? So if you have that, just imagine all of those different situations and those different people and those different emotions. They're all strings hooked into you. And what I want you to do is close your eyes, unhook, and I want you to actually physically take your hands, and if you're in a safe environment to do this, practice unhooking and handing back those strings. Unhooking and handing back. Because other people's experience is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is taking ownership for yourself and your actions. If someone feels upset, that's their feeling. They can come to you and communicate clearly, I am feeling upset because you did not do this thing you said you could do, or you were going to do. That's a very valid thing to say. And you can say, yes, I'm going to take care of that. And then you take care of it, and you shouldn't worry about it anymore. If there are any unresolved emotions, that's not your responsibility. You took care of the mistake, and now you can step forward with aligned action further. So we're going to keep unhooking anything that comes up. And the other thing about this that I think is really, really interesting, and it's a unique perspective, is if you notice as you're unhooking that someone is genuinely upset with you for something, or they are placing their experience in your hands, they are handing you the responsibility. If they say, I am tense every time you walk into the room, that is not your responsibility. So if this is getting a little bit down a rabbit hole, so I want to redirect us, but I do feel like this is important. If you're asking yourself, I showed up as my best self today. I really, I stayed in integrity with my values, right? So you're showing up, etc. And someone says, you are making me frustrated, but there is nothing that you're actually doing to make them frustrated. That is not your responsibility. Also, if they are feeling frustrated, but you are fulfilling your duties, if this is a work thing, that's not your responsibility. So I'm going to leave that at that, because we're getting off on a rabbit trail. That's a whole nother conversation for another time, but that is actually where I started when I noticed manipulative tendencies in the people, in specifically a couple people in my life previously. So if you're unhooking and you notice some of this, there may be more to it than the stories in your mind. Because sometimes we create stories and we hook into people, and other times people are actually hooking into us when it's manipulation. So another conversation for another time. Second practical tip: personifying your mean girl. Melissa Ambrosini has a really beautiful TED Talk, and I share this with everyone, where she talks about personifying your mean girl. And it's similar to the discussions above, that we previously talked about, where instead of seeing your negative inner dialogue as yours, you give it a name, where you say negative Nancy. That's what I mean by above. So you give it like a bitchy name, so that way you can say, hey, like, you're wrong. Like, you're not welcome here. This is not a space for you anymore. So it just makes it a lot easier for you to set a boundary with your negative dialogue. So that's kind of that tip, and I highly recommend reading or watching Melissa Ambrosini's. She actually has a book on it too, talk called Inner Mean Girl, something like that. So because of that rabbit trail, I need to keep us tracking here. Last practical step for this one is asking yourself, what would my highest self say to me right now? Because non-judgment is our lower self, if you want to think of it that way. And our highest self, what's the space and the grace that our highest self would tell us? And I just love asking that question because I think that oftentimes our highest self, which is simply within us, it has a lot of wisdom if we just ask. So that's the final tip for non-judgment. Let's go ahead and dive into pillar 3, resilience. So I am going to use this time to take another sip of tea because I'm going off on rants and feeling really passionate about this. All right. Please feel free to leave comments as I'm chatting about this stuff as well. I love responding to comments and sharing more, and it's also really helpful because then I know, oh, this really resonates and I should talk about this more, or okay, this is interesting, people really know this topic and I need to, focus on this other part of the topic or whatever it is. So comment away. Inner stability, which is very similar to self-trust, is a relationship. And I've already mentioned this before. And it takes time and consistency to develop. So in order to cultivate deep self-trust and inner stability, we must be resilient and relentless in our efforts. We must be resilient and relentless in our efforts. So a quote that actually feels really relevant is, "You are always with yourself, so you might as well enjoy the company." And that's by Diane. Here we go. There we go. Yep. And to rephrase that, that's by Diane von Furstenberg. I'm reading my notes here. Diane von Furstenberg. And I want to rephrase that just a little bit to be more positive. You are always with yourself, so why not become your own best friend, confidant, and hero? So diving into this even further, the concept of resilience, how we show up for ourselves is often mirrored back to us by the universe. So when we develop a stable relationship with ourselves, full of honesty, grace, and value, we show others, we show the people around us that we are deserving of honesty, grace, and value. How we believe in ourselves, how we show up for ourselves will impact all of our relationships, our family, friendships, clients, prospects, colleagues. And so when we are resilient in our efforts to be in communication with our body, to not have judgment towards our experience, it plays a part of building self-trust and inner stability. And it will be mirrored back to us. When we stand in our magic, magic is mirrored back. And Reclamation Queens don't quit. So, hold on, I'm just going to scroll down my notes here. So, I have another reference to our beautiful Disney princesses, right? So, to reference the examples at the very beginning that we chatted through, imagine if Mulan had given up when she was picked on at the training camp. What if Moana headed back home when Maui was unwilling to help her? Because when we look back again at that example of, okay, so I was talking about inner stability, I spilled coffee, so then what if I was like, oh, I should, not post this other thing on social media? I mean, that's a very low-key thing, but it would not have benefited me that day. It would not have benefited me as I'm working on my business. Something that I love and that is my magic. And it's those little things that sometimes bring us down a lot when something isn't working. I tried streaming this training live 3 times and the live didn't work. But I keep showing up because I know in order to be in alignment with my values, I want to keep showing up. So resilience is key. I know I will always show up for me. Sometimes showing up means taking a break. Sometimes showing up means showing the fuck up. And whatever that means for you, feeling into your body, noticing what is in alignment for you. That's what it's all about. And being resilient in your efforts to develop a trusting relationship with you. Keep showing up for you. That's that. So, reading what's on the screen, Reclamation Queens don't quit. We show up for ourselves over and over and over again. So a few practical ways that we can begin practicing resilience. The first one's going to seem really redundant, but it's just keep showing up. And I don't want to beat the dead horse. I hate that saying, but I don't want to beat the dead horse. But in theory, it sounds simple, but life does get sticky. And the key is to keep showing up. Reference the other pillars, turn to mindfulness tools and resources, continue developing that trusting relationship, and ask yourself, what is one small way that I can show up for myself right now? So, practical step number 2, ask for support. Resilience also means showing up for ourselves by asking for support. As we build our inner trust, we have to come to terms with realizing that sometimes we need to ask for help. When we tap into our feelings, we notice what we need, and when support is required, we ask. That's part of the trust. If we notice that we need help and we don't ask, that's actually perpetuating distrust with ourselves. So that's a really, really key, tricky one to notice and to remember. So I've said this before in other places, and I will say it again. We're not meant to walk this journey alone. Only we can do our deep work. But just like our mind and body are parts of a whole, we as humans are also part of a whole world. And when one of us is in pain, the others can come alongside and provide tools and be a mirror to support collective healing. Again, when we heal as a whole, just think about all of the magic that can happen. Think about all the beauty that can happen. So be responsible for yourself, ask for support, and be part of this collective healing as well. So to wrap up this training, ego says, once everything falls into place, I'll feel inner peace. Spirit says, find your inner peace, then everything will fall into place. So that's really what I want to leave you with this training, is that inner stability is yours to grasp now. No matter what your circumstance is, we can cultivate this trust. We can cultivate trust with ourselves so that our magic can pour out of us. And that means if you are in a situation where you need support, asking for it. But inner stability is ours. Healing is ours. Reclamation is ours. And I want to say this again, inner stability is yours. Healing is yours. Reclamation of your creativity, your magic, your voice, your power, it's yours. Sending you so much love with this. So, if you're still here, I have something really exciting for you. So, if you often find yourself pushing, hustling, and striving as you seek to unleash your magic into the world, I would love to invite you into the Reclamation Academy. The Reclamation Academy has resources for passionate women ready to deeply trust themselves and share their magic with the world. It's an online community and platform where you can reach out for support. There's your answer for support. Reach out for support. You can access, I'm actually going to click to my next slide here because I've got bullet points, access monthly trainings and Q&A, all of my worksheets, meditations, and resources, masterclasses, toolkits, monthly Voxer office hours, where if you have a specific question that you would like my support on, you can reach out. Within this, you'll also get access to exclusive one-on-one coaching opportunities with me. I am honing in on who I take one-on-one coaching from. So if you are part of the Reclamation Academy, you get a VIP pass to one-on-one exclusive coaching with me as those availabilities open up. So there is that. It's a beautiful mix of the deep inner work, the outer business strategy, so you can bring your big visions to life. I am really, really excited about this. It is really fun because, like, as you can see here, let's talk biz systems. What are a few of your favorite tools to unleash your magic to the world? What blocks you currently facing? And we have a beautiful thread where we're discussing business strategy items and business systems. But along with that, then we're discussing the deep work, the inner work, the reclamation work. So I would love to invite you to join the waiting list now to begin your free week-long trial and access the early bird pricing of only $27.99 per month. After the early bird pricing closes, it will be $59.99 per month. It's actually valued at significantly over that. However, I will be charging $59.99 per month, and the early bird pricing is the $27.99. So pretty great deal. I would love to have you here and have you in the group with me, especially if you are still here watching this. You are my people. I want you in the group. So I hope to see you there. Click the link and you can sign up now. So, all right. Thank you so much for all of this. This is my website, and look at that. It decided to make it blue. I would love to see you on my website as well. There's lots of resources and things there. So thank you so much for watching. See you in the Reclamation Academy.